Down in a moment. Oh, and we're live. Hello and welcome everybody to our afternoon program, Viral Storytelling in Pop Culture with Suk-Young Kim. She is the professor of theater and performance studies at UCLA. And I'm not going to take up any more time, and I'm going to let you guys listen because I am really excited to hear what's going on. All right, let me just
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Amanda. And thanks everyone for tuning in. It's really my great pleasure to be here today. And apologies for those of you who might have expected me to speak in August. I had a bit of family emergency, but here I am. And in a way, this kind of delayed appearance allowed me to focus on the latest rage in pop culture world, which is Squid Game. So the title of my presentation was kind of left in a flexible way, so I could talk about some of the things that people might be interested in hearing, and what else can we talk about other than Squid Game nowadays. So my presentation today will focus on the partnership between Netflix and K-drama, because by no means Squid Game was the first, Korean drama hit on Netflix. There were some precursors. So before I just delve into more close reading of Squid Game, perhaps I should share how this partnership has been forged. What are the advantages for both sides? And then transition into the second point of how is viral storytelling created? Why is Squid Game catching so much fire nowadays? And as a way to illustrate this, I'm going to move on to the third point. How is visual storytelling deployed in order to create such viral kind of popularity? So these 3 points will be the key kind of, cornerstones of my presentation today. So let's go into the first point, Netflix and K-drama. So I must give you some heads up that there will be a lot of spoilers for those of you who haven't watched Squid Game. And it might be a bit difficult to follow the presentation in case you haven't watched the show. However, I think that a lot of people might have, given the show's enormous kind of reach to general audience. So Squid Game was produced by a Korean production team, Siren Pictures, which is one of the local Korean production companies. And it was released on global media streaming site Netflix on September 17th, 2021. So we have, been hearing about this enormous popular show and have watched it in less than a month time. And on October 13th, which was little less than the date that the Squid Game was, little less than a month within its release date, it has reached the status of the most watched show on Netflix. So this is really a staggering record in many sense, particularly because the drama is set in Korea, featuring Korean characters. And many people watched it with subtitles or closed captioning, although Netflix provided dubbing in some 13 languages. So how could a local drama enter global arena in such a massive scale? So to kind of reflect on those questions, I would like to point out the partnership between Netflix as a streaming site and Korean drama world. So what's working here to create the productive dynamics between those two entities? So thinking about the Netflix first, I'm sure most people are familiar with the streaming sites format. When you enter Netflix, you're not really watching any advertising, unlike YouTube, where you have to either watch, full advertising or a few seconds of it until you can skip it. Netflix is an entity that really runs its business on the expansion of subscribers. So increasing the number of subscribers for platforms like Netflix is crucial for their business model. And if you look at the current subscribers kind of distribution across the globe, in North America and Europe, you have already oversaturated number of subscribers. So the opportunity for expanding the numbers there do not look so bright. So from the corporate perspective, they really have to reach out to audience members in Asia and Africa. Especially Asia has high population density, and it's a very important market for Netflix in that sense. And therefore, Netflix has been kind of bombarding Korean drama production world with heavy investment to produce K-dramas, which have proven traditionally to be very popular in many Asian countries. And even before the rise of streaming sites such as Netflix, Disney Plus, Korean drama, locally produced Korean dramas have gained, notable popularity in major countries in Africa. I mean, as a side note, some 10 years ago, I had a student who came to study, and he was from Botswana, and he was telling me how some Korean dramas such as Jewel in Palace, which came out in 2004, was the most popular Korean dramas in Botswana at the time. So you can see that Netflix has, much reason to invest in Korean drama production. Another factor that drives Netflix to pay attention to Korean drama production is its cost effectiveness. Korean drama world has tradition of producing very strong stories, human dramas with very little capital. So this, of course, is highly attractive for Netflix because you can really get a lot out of small amount of investment. But I must also point out the flip side of this cost effectiveness that comes across as attractive to global streaming sites such as Netflix. And in the future, more will join the bandwagon. HBO and Disney Plus, who are main competitors of Netflix, are already turning their eye to Korean drama production teams for the same reason. But the flip side of story here is that Korean drama production teams are not unionized. So therefore, the investors can bypass all kinds of rules and regulations that come with unionized labor force. So you can pay them less, perhaps, give less desirable working conditions. So you really have to question whether these Korean drama producers and staff members are being paid fairly for all the work they do. So just to give you a comparison point, Netflix prepaid the production company Siren Pictures in Korea a lump sum of some $16.8 million upfront. And the Korean drama production team is not getting any IP rights. So they don't have right to any merchandise, selling any merchandise, or produce season 2 or licensing. They're not gaining any extra income for extra streaming, and the global popularity that the show have reached do not financially benefit the drama production team because IP rights are within the corporation of Netflix. So to give you some comparison point, the one episode, producing one episode of Squid Game cost Netflix, $1.8 million, roughly speaking. And the most expensive show that Netflix has produced, which is The Crown, one episode production cost is 13 million. So you can compare 1.8 million to 30 million, which is a comparison point for producing one episode. So it's staggering. So this is something that I think we should think about. And also it is a point which thematically comes up in Squid Game, the inequality of those who have it and those who don't, so on and so forth. Now, then let's look at the K-drama world's perspective here on the right. So it is attractive for many Korean drama producers to partner up with Netflix because you can really focus on your creative freedom in a way. Because one good thing about partnering up with Netflix is that they don't really meddle with the content regulation. Unlike traditional Korean dramas made for television and cable TV, which were subject to strict regulations to filter out unsavory elements that are not necessarily friendly for family entertainment in your home theater environment, in your living room. So Netflix lifted up all those regulations and interventions so the creators of Korean drama could really enjoy high creative freedom. And the production budget that are usually given by Netflix is much higher than local production budgets. So you could really focus on the polished, high production quality before it's being released. However, as I pointed out, Korean drama world is still entering the relationship as subcontractor to Netflix. So I'm really interested to see how this relationship will change in the future with this increased voice that Korean drama world has garnered with the phenomenal success of Squid Game. So to give you a kind of snapshot of why the story of Squid Game was so popular across the world is something that we have to kind of overview before going into deep narrative analysis. And in my view, the show has done a really good job of blending these local elements with global elements. So this hybridity of the story and storytelling technique, I think, really appealed across so many viewership. So to look at the thematics of the show, the local element can be really identified as specifically Korean children's game. These are the games that I recognize from my childhood. And the rules of the game are simple enough for global audience to immediately follow and get into the kind of psychological thrill of those who play this game at the cost of their own lives. However, those kind of risk-taking measures that drive these desperate game contestants to these deadly games can be framed against the backdrop of global pandemic and the economic crisis that COVID-19 has intensified. I don't need to spend extensive time explaining how the wealth gap during the pandemic has intensified. The stock market last year has skyrocketed, and it created so much of speculative kind of sentiment among ordinary people. So the kind of high concentration of capital enabling the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer with this speculative mentality is something that is really embedded in the fabric and the formatting of the children's game. So those resonate well locally as well as globally. If you look at language, the show was not shy about introducing very specific Korean words, which are not necessarily translatable to any counterpart languages. And one example of that is ganbu, which is kind of close buddies who share everything, including toys. So there is no division between what is mine and what is yours. So these kind of locally specific elements through language was introduced to kind of pique interest of the global viewers. At the same time, for those viewers who didn't want to transcend 1-inch barrier of subtitles, they had an option to enjoy the show through dubbing. So it made the linguistic barrier kind of not be the real barrier for those who didn't want to deal with it. In terms of genre, I think Squid Game really crosses the boundary between these two elements here. So there are immediately recognizable kind of local Korean drama tropes, such as very strong element of sentimental family melodrama. And as you have noticed, for those of you who watch the show, family ties, obligations, and relationship really play a huge role in character development. And the depiction of excessive violence stem from the genre of Asia Extreme, which blends horror, thriller, mystery, and violence. So there are recognizable kind of local Korean and Asian elements, but at the same time, the premise of the show is based on familiar tropes of survival reality shows, death games, thriller, and mystery. So the blending of this locality and globality was done really nicely to attract local as well as global audience. Now, this is probably the moment to switch to the viral storytelling, which is the second point of my presentation. Why has this story become so viral? And before we get to that, what do we mean by viral storytelling? So I would like to introduce this concept by quoting Yale economics professor Robert Shiller's book, which came out in 2019. And the title of it is Narrative Economics: How Stories Go Viral and Drive Major Economic Events. So this is a very kind of straightforward, analysis and almost kind of consulting, advice of how stories can be created in a viral way. And he has many interesting points, but to kind of crystallize the main points, Schiller says that you have to give people a story they can retell. And what helps people to retell a story is a very vivid visual image you can use when you tell your story. And the third point is value what your audience values. So you can see that these elements have been really faithfully kind of played out in Squid Game. And let me get to the example of that. So soon after Squid Game came out, people were retelling the story in many different media formats. And this is an example of Roblox, which is a metaverse where users also create their own games. And, so it's a kind of user-driven metaverse game-playing world where Squid Game was immediately adopted and millions of people were playing the game. So you can definitely see how it was spreading to other media platforms such as gaming platforms. Now, how did people really retell this story? What were the things that they were saying when they told the crux of the story to people who haven't watched it? In my view, I think the drama is really telling an allegory about the condition of life under COVID. I don't have to waste extensive time explaining how automation and surveillance and digital transformation that became highly accelerated under COVID have transformed our lives irreversibly. So the lack of human contact and the accompanying process of automation replacing human voice, human labor, and human action have become the norms of life under COVID and to a certain extent post-COVID era. So the horrifying image of this human-like doll that is also betraying the human-like feature by rotating her neck. It is 180 degrees, is immediately pointing to the horrifying conditions of automation where human body is being displaced and replaced by auto machines like this doll. And actual human bodies, as you can see, can be immediately mapped into recognizable data of which one is moving and which one is not. And they become immediately dispensable, disposable. So those who don't fit into the rules of moving or not moving are immediately shot down with the help of this automaton that you see on the left. And I think this is kind of an excessive allegory of the condition of COVID life. Another reason I call this COVID drama, and the reason why people could relate to the story and retell it as COVID drama, is kind of recognizable tropes that point to our fears of contagion, and the primary role masks have played in our lives under COVID. So in the first game, Red Light, Green Light, that was featured in a shocking manner in episode 1, we immediately see here on the left side the fear of contagion. One of the kind of fears that we all had under COVID and still have under COVID is the fear of contagion by other bodies, especially by other bodily fluids. And here we have this image of a woman grabbing her face because her face has been splashed by this blood of other person who was shot during that game. And I think one of the most horrifying scenes for me throughout this rather gory and violent drama is this particular image where our deep fears of being contaminated by others' bodily fluid is really played so bluntly. On the right, you see an image of a guard who has been unmasked by a player who is really driven to the extreme, and he's threatening the guard to take off his mask. And this is a moment when we realize that this masked guard, whose humanity has been erased by the erasure of their faces and facial expressions, really reveal their true identity. And here is a shocking moment where these faceless guards who act like automatons actually appear in human face. And we're also shocked by how young this guard, this commander, is really beneath the masking. And I think this is a crucial moment for those of you who have seen the drama. This guard is eliminated because he went against the rule, which stipulates that guards should never take their masks off. Otherwise, revealing your identity means you're dead. And the guard actually dies in this scene. So this again translates to the COVID fear of unmasking equaling your pathway to death. So these horrifying kind of life conditions under COVID are immediately played out. And I think this is why the story can be easily retold by millions of viewers. Again, I think this is a COVID drama because, as I said, the deepening wealth gap under COVID has intensified our sentiment of speculation, gambling, and risk-taking. The main character, Ki-hoon here, who later ends up winning the game against the odds, is introduced in the first episode as a gambler. He had a rather ordinary life as a kind of worker at the auto manufacturing company, but he lost his job due to restructuring of that company. He lost his co-worker and has ventured into a series of unsuccessful business, such as running a fried chicken franchise, running a snack bar, but all those efforts of this ordinary person leads to failure. And now he's resorted to constant gambling to make any money he can, to no avail. So on the left, you see Ki-hoon trying to win a prize at this arcade claw machine for his daughter's birthday. I mean, he's so desperate that he can't afford to buy his daughter's birthday present. So he does this kind of miniature, funny, cute, sad gambling act to even be a father to his daughter. Risk-taking and gambling appear at every level of narrative build-up. And I think it intensifies as the games go on. And more players are being eliminated. For those of you who have seen the show might recall this tug of war, which is like really spectacularly staged with the fear of height and the collective effort, and how life and death could be really determined at a moment's kind of decision and risk taking and this gambling sentiment. So you might recall that Kiwon's team was on the cusp of losing this tug of war because they had many weak team members. And Sang-woo, who was the leader, who is like the brain person of this team, decides to take a risk, which is to take a couple of steps forward so that the center of gravity could kind of shift to the other team, and when the other opposing team lose balance, they would start tugging back. So this gambling measures, this immense speculative decision making pays off. So gambling risk taking measures are really at the every step of narrative buildup, which speaks to our speculative mentality under COVID era. Here's another example of risk taking. And this is another game, Stepping Stone, where contestants have to cross this bridge and they have to make choice between tempered glass, which can hold up their weight, and normal glass, which will shatter and just lead to their immediate death with the fall. And you can see that this arena is highly theatrical. It actually looks like circus marquee, as you can see from the ceiling design. So the players, which we can kind of allegorically understand as those of us, ordinary people, desperate people, living in this highly speculative era, are players in a circus in a way. So the risk-taking is a viral element that we can all relate to and easily retell to other people. So another element for creating viral storytelling is the second principle, which is include a visual image. And one of the main elements of what hooked me to this drama was this very vivid color palette that we're introduced to immediately. And look at this kind of contrast of colors. Green and red or dark pink reddish color are diametrically opposed color schemes. So we immediately understand, even if we don't read subtitles, even if we don't understand Korean language, the visual mise-en-scène tells so much about what is happening in the scene. So the numerous players, all garbed in same uniform, identified with numbers, are gazed down by a guard whose face is masked, and therefore having more protection in a way. And the guards are placed on a higher platform looking down. So we immediately understand the hierarchy among these people here. So the hierarchy of the guards on a platform and disposable, expandable players, this kind of vertical hierarchy further extends immediately in this scene when the prize money is introduced into the screen itself. And look at the color and the lighting of this scene. You see that here, the glowing piggy bank, which deposits certain amount of money whenever a player dies as a cash prize for the winner to take it all, is lit up like sun in the light. So they're almost like a mythical or religious object of worship. And the lighting design glows warmly, as if it's like soothing, kind of comforting element in this harrowing slaughterhouse setup. So a visual image is telling so much of a story in this mise-en-scène. As you have noticed, the dormitory-like setup for contestants to kind of to be all kind of quarantined really looks like a coliseum, and the immense height, the stacked up beds here is kind of It's an inspiration that came from Colosseum. Netflix released many behind the scenes videos, and the interview with actors and directors clarify that the inspiration for this dormitory set came from Colosseum, and also warehouse, where the idea of human bodies can be stacked up like products to be sold and bought and be disposed after being used. So those kind of blending of images that comes with this harrowing power that is kind of conveyed by where you are in this height. Vertical structure is really being well conveyed here. And it is kind of significant that after the first game, when all the contestants are in horror, begging the guards to release them from these deadly games, it is very significant that Sang-woo stands up as a sole figure of reason and voice. And he immediately tells the guards that we have right to vote to get out of this game. And it is no wonder that he alone is the one who kind of vertically stands up and kind of shows his stature, his height, while everyone is kind of, kowtowing in fear. Yeah, we can kind of almost foretell that this character is somebody who will stand as one of the last gladiators in this fighting arena in the last scene. The idea of visual storytelling that is perched on height and hierarchy continues in the visual design team's extensive use of stair scene. I find this stair scene very horrifying and amusing at the same time, because as the design team revealed in an interview, the inspiration for this came from the trail of ants moving automatically and in an orderly manner, despite the risks or dangers there might be. They're just moving as a collective, like automated machines. And the actual design of the stairs really remind us of Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, which won the Best Picture at the Academy Awards in 2020. For those of you who have seen that film, the vertical kind of hierarchy, the ascending and descending moves immediately translate into the class mobility. So the visual storytelling is very, very much in line with the Parasite's world. The actual inspiration for this set design, according to the art director Choi Kyung-sun, is coming from MC Escher's graphic print named Relativity. So in order to get more deeply into visual and viral storytelling, I wanted to pause and reflect on what this stair design really represents that inspired the stair design of Squid Game. So this is Escher, the artist himself, commenting on his creation, Relativity. In this picture, 3 gravitational forces operate perpendicularly to one another. Yeah, as you can see, like this subject's gravity pulls him down this way. This walking subject's gravity pulls him down that way. This walking subject's gravity pulls him down this way. So there are many gravitational forces here. Men are walking in crisscrosses on the floor and stairs. Some of them, though belonging to different worlds, come very close together, but can be aware of one another's existence. So example of that will be this walking subject's world is defined by this way of gravitational force. This one is pulled down this way. They come very close, but they're not aware of each other's worlds. So he calls this relativity, right? So in a way, it's an allegorical statement of how we follow our kind of gravitational, rules of the gravitational force. We move to certain directions, and people living in these different worlds come very close, but we often do not see each other's presence. And I think this is a very symptomatic way of defining the world of Squid Game. These people are marching to their own death, which they're not aware of. And that own world is the own world of deadly games is all viewed by these wealthy VIPs who actually sponsor these games with their speculations and gambling of massive scale. So we'll get to that in a second. I think further on, the graphic artist Escher's creations that blend many dimensional forces and extend surface shapes to create a different dimensions of the world, which are not always visible, is also well portrayed in his work, Convex and Concave. So for those of you who need a reminder of what they mean, this is concave and this is convex, and together they would make a perfect whole shape, right? This convex could supplement the missing part in concave, vice versa. This could be divided into half and surround this and make a perfect cylinder. So they are very complementary shapes, but working on oppositional kind of forces. And here, again, I'm quoting from Escher so that we can kind of delve deeper into visual narrative force of the show Squid Game. In the central strip, things are uncertain and can be seen in two different ways. A floor is also a ceiling, right here. An interior is also an exterior, maybe over here. And these decorative objects. Concave is at the same time a convex. And I think this last sentence is very crucial because although the different worlds of rich and poor might be dispersed and not necessarily connected, and people living in those two worlds might not see each other necessarily, they are all interconnected and they complement each other, as we can see in the shapes of concave and convex. So going back to the hierarchical power relationship between the guard and the players, in the beginning, we see that they kind of belong to the different world as marked by opposite colors and different height. But then the camera immediately kind of shows the reverse perspective of looking at those guards from the player's perspective. And now they are kind of reduced to this small miniature minority figure, and their sameness, only marked by the different kind of geometric shapes on their masks, are actually pointing to the fact that they too are expendable, disposable figures, just like the players are in these games. And just like there is a strict sense of hierarchy among 456 players, as we can see, it soon turns into dog world, where thuggish, violent characters with physical strength will soon gang up against the weak players in this world of players. And you can see that such hierarchy also exists within the guards as they are differentiated with their mask shapes. So it's again the world of concave and convex. What about the VIPs who orchestrated all these games and sees it all? I see them as an extension of this world made up of concave and convex, which are all related. And although these VIPs, play with the guards and mostly with players like puppet masters, they are also drawn into the matrix of the world made of concave and convex, because they too have to be masked, just like the guards, to conceal their identities. And the theatricality, the ornate design of the masks in the shape of beasts, animals, really draw our attention to how their faces are also the faces that are spectated. So these VIPs are spectating and being spectated at the same time by each other and by the one of the police members who sneak into this world of VIPs to get to the bottom of the masterminds of the games. So And also, we should notice that these beastly figures are very much kind of bringing us back to the world of Colosseum, where they, the beasts themselves, were objects of expectation. So again, this is a world of interconnectedness made of complementary elements, while the actors trapped in each world might not necessarily see each other, but at the end of the day, they're all interconnected. So going back to a deeper kind of philosophical questions of the show, which makes it also very viral, we have constantly been presented with the question of to play this deadly game or not to play with the deadly game. So after the first games have been, executed, and so many people, half the contestants have been shot, players are now asking for a voting so that they can collectively decide whether to get out of the games or continue on with deadly consequences. And you can see that they are presented with green and red button. Pressing green would mean that they want to continue on with the games. Pressing red button means they hope to get out of this island to get their lives back. And the mastermind frontman is watching in his private monitoring room what kind of choices are being made by the contestants. Again, these kind of back-to-back images show us the world of conclave and convex, those who have to decide and those who watch it as entertainment. But what kind of choices are these players actually given, right? I mean, so with a very slight margin of one vote, players collectively decide to get out of the games, but 93% of them later end up coming back to this deadly island because the life out there, their actual lives before they join the games, are as hellish as their experience on this island. So what kind of choice is that? To live or not to live? To die or not to die? To play or not to play are actually false choices that are all intermingled into this deadly consequences. And let's talk about the frontman, because he really is an interesting character. Later on, it turns out that he was actually one of the winners from previous games in 2015. And he won this large cash prize to live, life of luxury and wealth. But interestingly, he ends up coming to this island to be the top managerial force to run everything for the VIPs. So what kind of choice does he have? He's actually the one who actually won the game and has a choice of being away from all these, beastly games, but he's back. And in my view, he's not only watching the screen of seeing other players choose, but the choice is as if presented it to him again, to play or not to play. He's still struggling with this choice, although he has the power to escape. So it's again drawn into the same world of conclave and convex, where people are given false choices and there's actually no way out of this. And I think this kind of deeper philosophical underpinning of to live or not to live is also ironically presented in this visual element. And I think the design is really on top. It's right on point. You might have noticed that very ironically and in an eerie way, when contestants die, their coffin, they're put into this coffin, which looks like a large gift box. And this coffin is, brought to crematorium. And this gift box, image of a gift box just surfaces throughout the whole 9 episodes. So in the lower right, you see the color scheme of black and pink. And this is actually a birthday present that Gi-hun, our male protagonist's daughter, opens up. Remember, Gi-hun had no money, so he had to go to the claw machine to take out this gift box, and he had no idea what was in it. So he gives it to his daughter, who opens it to find out that there is this black gun. So this kind of image of violence and death, although it's a toy, it immediately kind of betrays the idea of birthday gift that is given to a child to celebrate the birth of that child. So this kind of instantaneous collapse between life and death as conclave and convex are kind of presented in a humorous way. And this humor soon degenerates into horrifying show of how this gift, invitation to death, spirals into the actual death that you see on the left. So, gift giving is exchanging life with death, and perhaps at times death with life. One of the most heartbreaking moments in the show is when the old man gives Ki-hun a life-giving gift. He intentionally loses this marble game to give Ki-hun a chance to live. And he gives his last remaining marble to him and says, "It's yours. It's yours to take. It's the gift." And as a result, Gi-hun gets to live, but the old man is shot to death. So the immediate collapse of life and death is again reinforced in this moment. And of course, I'm not going to spoil what happens to the old man for those who don't want to be spoiled, but again, the flimsy boundary between life and death continues on with gift exchange. So ultimately, I think the show brings us deep down into our own nerve, our own very existence, or question of to play or not to play, to live or not to live. But this question itself is actually an empty question, because at the end of the day, we don't have a choice. We have to keep playing this game that we can extend to our real life situations, right? So what kind of choices do we really have? So that concludes my presentation. I have so much to say, and I am really excited to hear your comments and questions. So let's open it up. Thank you very much.
Oh, excuse me. Suk-Young, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. We don't have any comments at the moment, but that doesn't mean none will show up. So if you're watching this later and you have a question or comment, please make sure to put it in there. We'll make sure to get it along to Suk-Young so we can get an answer for you. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and doing this for us. And I want to thank everybody who has joined us this afternoon and everybody who's going to be watching this later. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I will end the broadcast.